So hello everyone. I come from Brazil originally, but I live in the UK. I just moved back to Europe last year. I'm working for Lush Cosmetics. Yeah, it's hard to describe my role, but I coordinate some of the regenerative, what I call regenerative impact. And also I've been working a lot of charitable giving and giving. And the third thing that I do there is organizational development. So how can we create an organization that really functions as a healthy living system? And this is not quick work. And I took a 6-year break from Lush. I'll explain a little bit more about that. And during this break, I went really deeply into self-organizations and into organizations really as living systems. So besides Lush, while I was in Brazil, I helped set up sociocracy in Brazil, like one of the pioneering work of sociocracy in Brazil. I also started a community of practice called Regenerative, so we can learn and start even figuring out what it is to have a regenerative organization. We really don't know at the moment, even if that's really possible. But we need to start figuring that out. And then finally, my heart project is called the Blueprint Alliance, and this is the intersection between regenerative design and the humanitarian sector. So how can we also change aid, development? Again, I'm going to talk a lot today about using disaster as an opportunity. How can we then influence how we rebuild, how we recover after a disaster or a crisis? So yeah, I've been in this space for a while, and I'm going to read I normally don't read from my notes, but because I'm going to talk about very personal topics, I need some support. So yeah, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my personal experience and a little bit of my practice around regeneration, and then I'm going to give it over to you, and we're going to be inspired by nature and see what we can learn from nature to our organizations. Okay, so I've been doing environmental work for maybe 15 years, and I was already really worried about the environment 15 years ago, when I think we still had time to do something about it. Not that we don't have time now, but it was the good old days of the beginning of the climate conferences, when we were still, going for 350 parts per million, and then there was still time to really avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Now, even if we stopped our emissions today and went zero emissions, because of the delay in the climate system, it would still take 30 years for the climate to stabilize. It's going to take between 5 and 7 million years for biodiversity to recover to what it was before the 6th mass extinction started. So I don't think it's a question of whether collapse is going to happen. Collapse is happening. The insect is collapsing. Biodiversity is collapsing, the water cycle is collapsing, the nitrogen cycle is collapsing. We are in it now. And it's interesting because I think we can't avoid collapse. And still, I'm giving all my energy and all my time to working on regeneration, because I believe we have this unique opportunity. Oh, and I cry. Oh. I really wish we hadn't done that thing this morning. Wow. Yeah. That's why I need my notes. Yeah, because I think we have this unique opportunity to not go into despair and to actually act and do something right now. And I'm going to tell an even harder story. And it's and I only believe it, like I really only believe that the space that a disaster or a crisis create can really allow us to build something new, because I've been through it. Yeah, I'm even gonna sit down because I'm gonna cry a lot. So I was married to this wonderful man. He was really special human being, like really special. And yeah, we really started to investigate together how it was possible to change business, to really like create businesses and organizations that were based on this collaboration. We talk a lot about collaboration, but it's not just collaboration between humans. It's collaboration between humans and all other living beings. And we still haven't quite learned how to collaborate with water, how to collaborate with animals, how to collaborate with fungi. I think this is the next stage of development for organizations. So yeah, so my partner and I, we were completely in love with each other and with like this infinite possibilities of co-creating with the natural world. And in 2012, I left my job in the UK. I was already working for Lush on environmental issues. And I moved back to Brazil because I wanted to live near the forest. I wanted to grow my own food and also help catalyze projects in Brazil. And also be part of community. I really longed for community. And he continued his job. And through his work, he pretty much revolutionized Lush supply chain. It's really incredible. About 9 years ago, I remember he started planting for the first time that seed that, what if we go beyond sustainability? Like what's on the other side? What's further from the point of sustainability? And what if we, instead of buying fair trade or from organic farms, we are actually supporting bioregional regeneration? And what if instead of mining the fertility of the soil, we helped to build healthy soil through the materials we buy? And what if instead of draining water through wells, sometimes well-meaning wells, how many water bottles you know that if you buy the water, they plant a well in Africa? You know, like this idea of planting wells is great, but who is replenishing the water to keep those wells working? So how can we do that through our supply chain? How can we look how we can make rain, how we can make water? And then ultimately, how can we give back to the ecosystems more than we take? I think those are some of the questions that he was asking and we were asking. And those powerful questions had a lot of resonance in the business. And some really beautiful projects came out of it. I'll talk about one of them. And when he was in Ghana, in one of those projects, actually he was creating a water retention landscape and training people on how to do that. Thank you. It was a project that became our supplier for moringa oil. Really beautiful, working with networkers of farmers, working with permaculture, really building soil and community and livelihoods. But Paulo got malaria. And a week later, he was in a coma in a hospital in Brazil. Oh, it's been 5 years. Anyway, it's nice to cry about this. I don't cry about it very often anymore. Anyway, and it was super interesting because I could both witness the ability of the body to regenerate. Our human body is the most incredible thing. Like it's like you can beat it. You have to do a lot to kill it. Like we are really resilient. Like you really have to give it a good beating. And it's so and it can recover so quickly, and you see regeneration before our eyes. But I could also see what happens when we go beyond the carrying capacity of the body. And probably one of the most valuable lessons I learned was that the same system that was trying to fix him, the hospital, the medication, the nurses, was also the same system that was also killing him. And I think this is true for some of the solutions or some of the things that we're trying to do now in order to repair the damage we've done. And last week I was with a bunch of incredible people from many regenerative projects. And we fund a project in Philippines that works with communities who have been displaced by typhoons. You know, they've been having some of record typhoons in Philippines. And another community, a whole city that was displaced by terrorism, by ISIS. And they're working with those two communities on a project of resettlement and regeneration. And she told me, you know, you can't fix something that is broken with a broken system. And that stayed with me, and I could really see that with what was happening with Paulo. It was really interesting. And after 4 months of intensive care, he died. He passed away. Like his body just couldn't withstand the multiple assaults of the malaria, coupled with hospital bacteria, antibiotic-resistant bacteria. He got 8 infections. And for me, and I mean, like, we were both environmentalists, like everything that was happening to him, really, I could feel the earth, you know, I could feel those things happening to the earth. Like the same thing we're doing with pesticides and monoculture. Like, we're creating super resistant weeds that are resistant to all pesticides and having to use stronger and stronger pesticides because we've broken the system. We have toxins that are polluting the blood of the earth, and it was so crazy because he couldn't breathe properly because of too much CO2. And I said, oh wow, like, you know, like he's dying from too much CO2, and then the same thing's happening to the planet. And anyway, you really can't fix something that is broken with a broken system. And then I think his time in hospital and his death and my time in hospital with him also taught me a lot about myself and actually how resilient I was. I had community, I had so much love, I had this global network of prayers and support, I had meaning, I had connection, I had a clear sense of purpose. And I was really sad and I grieved and it took me some time to recover, but I was not traumatized. And I think this is an important thing. I didn't walk out of that experience traumatized. And for me, I could also find a courage that I didn't even think I had. Like, I felt a lot of fear. Like, every day I had to wake up and then walk to the hospital and look. I used to joke that I would just look death in the eye and say, is it today that you're taking him? And I think for me, like, nature works in a way where disturbance generates growth. So nature uses disturbance for growth. If you see forest fires is a natural phenomenon, not what we're seeing now, but it's a part of the system to regenerate. Floods and drought, it's usually a part of the system. The system can cope. Now the system can't cope anymore. But anyway, this disturbance for me was a rite of passage. It was a rite of passage. I grew. I felt the whole time that I was being trained, that I was growing my internal capacities to deal with disturbances and use them for growth. And I see the times that we are in now exactly that. It's exactly the same thing. This is a rite of passage for humanity. This is said by a friend, Daniel Val. And how are we going to use the disturbances that we're going to go through in the coming years really defines what kind of future we can have on the planet. So are we use these disturbances to make humanity extinct, or are we going to use them to grow into our full potential as, true stewards of this planet? And that's why I get sad and cry, and I even get anxious about what's happening to the planet, but I don't despair because I know it's possible to go through this in a regenerative way. And I really see the times that we're living as like the biggest opportunity that we have. It is possible to come out stronger. And then I think there is the question, like, how can we collectively look at the death of our civilization in the eye and not run away? And not pretend that it's not happening, or not think that by just making some small cosmetic changes, we can really change things? This is, like the straw. I always joke about the straw. Yeah. This is time for what a professor in the UK calls deep adaptation. Like we need to be devoting our attention to this deep adaptation. We're still trying to fix something that is broken with a broken system, with a broken culture. So I think the question is, how do we heal our culture? And big things are going to happen. Like there will be a lot of things happening in the next few years. And then at the same time, I feel personally that we need to prepare for the disturbances. And at the same time, we need to prepare for what's going to come next. So I say prepare the rebirth. So let's not be afraid of the death of our civilization, but let's start preparing the rebirth. It's said, I think this is Joanna Macy actually. Oh, sorry, I forgot. That we are the hospice workers or the hospice nurses of our dying culture and the midwives of the new culture. And we need to hold those two spaces. And we need to make sure this is a good death. Not try to avoid it, but just make sure it's a good death. And then if nature uses disturbances for growth, what are the things we want to grow? What kind of culture do we want to grow? And we talked about culture in the other session. It's like we can't really design culture. We can only create conditions. We can design the conditions for a specific type of culture to emerge. But culture is an emergent process. It's something that emerges. Where am I? Yeah. So I think that's the question. Like, what are the conditions that we need to prepare now so that it's an earth-centric, regenerative culture that emerges after the disturbances? And I think this is our work now. We need to think, we need to feel, we need to imagine this culture right now. Like, we need to create the DNA of the seeds of the new culture that we will want to plant. For me now, it's the time to really breed the seeds, the right seeds. And for me, it's a culture that can see life as sacred, that really understands that we are nature. And that is upon deep cooperation, as I said before. And then the question that I pretty much ask myself every day when I wake up is, how can I be relevant at these changing times? What is my role? What is the unique gift that I bring at this crucial time for humanity when we really need everyone? And then what are the seeds that I'm preparing every day through the things that I'm saying, through the things that I'm thinking, through the things that I'm buying, that I'm acting, through how I work? What are the seeds that I'm helping to prepare? And for me, maybe also what's relevant to this group is that I felt personally that it was, if I could help create the DNA of the new organizations, that's how I felt I could be most useful and most relevant. And folks, I thought a lot about this. Like I thought, should I go to an NGO, or should I set up my own project, or should I go back to the corporate sector? And I said, okay, where can I have the biggest impact? Where can I really change this DNA at a deeper level, which is our economic system? Because I really believe that the organizations we're creating, some of them are going to have to become a bridge. Like a bridge into this dying culture and into this new culture. A bridge that can go over these disturbances and can almost go over the death of our civilization so that we can carry the seeds to the other side. We need to carefully tend to those seeds so we can plant them on the other side. And then another is if we need to create this new culture and we have no idea what it's going to look like, we need to test this. So we need to create the labs for this new culture, and our organizations are great opportunities to become labs for this new peace culture. And more importantly, we talk a lot about new work, but it's not just about new work. It's why are we doing the new work? What is the purpose? What is our ultimate goal? So new work needs to be regenerative for individuals, but also for the communities and the ecosystems around them. This is not just about making companies more productive, profitable, and effective. This is about changing our civilization. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had to say. It's like, now it's time to breed those seeds, and I think it requires a lot of courage and a lot of creativity and a lot of community and a good dose of humility. And then I think we'll spend some time on this question, like, oh, what have I done? Oh no. What do you need to be ready? That's it. We'll do lots more, but I think that's it for now. Thank you. So now let's work a little bit with that question. I know it's a huge question. I think the first one is like, there is something about one of the principles of regenerative organizations and one of the principles of nature is about uniqueness. Every species and every organization brings a unique contribution to that ecosystem, to that system. And the same is with every human being and every person inside of an organization. So there is something about the essence of what you bring and the uniqueness of what you bring. And we need to find what is the uniqueness that we bring within this regenerative perspective. And this for me is about being relevant. And it doesn't matter, maybe your relevance is by doing something very small, but that is transformative. Maybe it's doing something big that has a big influence. I think the word here is transformative. It's making sure that in whatever way you're relevant, you're really being transformative. That is not just a shallow way of transforming the system. Oh, you can't transform shallow, but it's not just a shallow way of changing the system, that there is really a transformation. So I think the question is, how are you choosing to be relevant at these changing times? What is the best contribution you can make within your sphere of influence right now? We did that, we did some of that work yesterday. So this is just like building on what you already did yesterday. And then how do you resource yourself? So there was also a similar question yesterday. And this is more like, what do you need in order to do this work concretely? And then we're going to do this. This one you're just going to do in pairs. This question I'll explain after, okay? So just do this first one in pairs, and the second one we're going to do 1, 2, 4, 8, and try to hear from the group what are the common ideas for how we resource each other in order to do this work, okay? So again, the first one in pairs, just answer the first question. We come back. I'm also only gonna give maybe 4 minutes to each person. We come back together and then we do the second question, 1, 2, 4, 8. And I'll just very briefly talk about a little bit more about the concept of regenerative organizations, and then we're going to go outside to think about nature principles. Okay, so does anyone here know Tamera, the eco-village in Portugal? Oh, lots of people. So I go to Tamera quite a lot. And I've always seen these like billboards there. And I never understood what it meant. And then earlier this year, I was like, I finally understand this idea that there is a world that we create and there is the world that has created us. These two worlds must come together. This is the goal of our journey. And the way I understand this is that there is a world that we're creating with our organizations and our objects and our communities and everything that humans have created. And then there is something that created us, which operates on completely different principles. We have actually created organizations, economies, way of buildings that are completely against life principles. I still don't know how we managed to do such a great job. And somehow we need those two worlds to come together. We need to align the principles of human creation with the principles of the same nature that created us and that we're part of. And I think that's the concept of the regenerative organizations. This is from some amazing people in the US working on regenerative organizations called N-Rhythm. And it's full of jargon, so we're going to do something a little bit simpler. But it's like a living, evolving, naturally functioning organization. And I love this, where abundance and resilience are recurring outcomes of its underlying health. So one of the key things for regeneration is health at many different levels. So it's the health of the individual. How healthy am I in my organization? Am I better for working here than if I were not working here? Do I know more? Am I more emotionally resilient? Am I more emotionally intelligent? Do I have better connections to myself and to others? How can we create organizations that can support individual development and growth? For the teams, are our teams healthy? Is the communication healthy? Is the way they do work healthy? Are also the impact and the outcomes healthy? Same thing for their organization. And then finally, how is my organization increasing the health of the town it's in, of the neighborhood, of the ecosystem, of the community? You get the idea. And then there is a lot of literature, not a lot actually, there is a little bit of literature on regenerative organizations, which is really full of jargon. If you don't know a lot about ecological design, it takes some time to understand all the concepts. So I tried to get all of that and make something really simple for Lush. So I came up with these three things. That it's a lot of regeneration is about realizing potential. So more than solving problems, it's about looking at what the system could be, looking at the dream, looking at the potential. Usually from the story of place, so local, bioregional, from the story of place and from the uniqueness that we bring, we create transformative innovation. So how can, for example, some of the stuff that Lush is doing around packaging to really try to transform the way we shop without packaging. Then we need to repair and heal because there is a lot of damage that has already been done. And we want to increase our positive impact and build new capacity. What I call this is we need to learn how to do this. We need to learn how to go over this disturbance in a regenerative way. We don't have the skills yet. We really need to learn at massive scale. And finally, reduce harm. So how, if you look at sustainability is just about doing no harm. Yeah, we want to go well beyond, reduce our negative impact and displace extractive business. How can we begin to displace the stuff that's ruining our planet? I use these three little things, three goals.
Can you give an example for each of those?
Sure. So as I said, realizing potential. So we've been talking a lot about how can we create a fully regenerative supply chain. We're still a long time away from that, but we're working on key projects that can demonstrate by how from buying materials from that community or from that cooperative, we're actually increasing the health, like we buy organic cotton we have like a fully traceable organic cotton supply chain where the farmers have designed water design features. So they're putting more water into their ecosystem than the cotton is taking out. So they're recharging groundwater, as well as recharging community, moving farmers from pesticide cotton to organic cotton. So this is really achieving the potential of their region, yes, and providing livelihoods through also fair pay. So repairing and healing, we have things like closed loop, where we collect packaging, and with that packaging we make the same new packaging. So we are trying to repair the harm that was done by legacy plastic. We also in North America are collecting ocean plastics and turning into packaging. So again, we're repairing and healing. We're trying to repair historical damage that has been done. With reducing harm, it's, for example, palm oil. So we took palm oil out of a bunch of products and a bunch of ingredients, but we haven't managed to take palm oil completely. So this is still at the reduced harm level. And then we can look at also organizationally speaking, I can give examples, of those. We have teams that are fully working as a self-management, self-organized. We have teams like Lush Germany that we are, repairing previous damage and healing things before we can move there. And then we have places in the UK where I'm just trying to do some harm reduction. Like where there's still like top-down hierarchies, and what we're trying is to, delegate more, empower people. The minute you use the word empower, you're here, you're not there. You only need to empower if the power is sitting with one, person or one place. Okay, and then just to give another little example. This is probably the first packaging ever that by producing the packaging, you store more carbon. So, so the whole supply chain of the packaging, it's cork from Portugal, from a regenerative project that takes land that was, basically you just have the cork, the oak trees, and nothing left because it's just dry lands. And they go and they completely regenerate the ecosystem. Take brush, plant new species, create multi-species forest. And what Lush did, they developed the packaging in partnership with the group in Portugal. Then they supported the group in creating a new regenerative enterprise, and they set up a new enterprise that's now employing people in one of the poorest regions in Portugal and making packaging that stores more carbon and more water than the whole supply chain. So like by buying something, you're actually storing more carbon. It's like we're getting an organization in the UK, they're gonna have to invent a new label because this has not been done before. So it's the new label of net positive. No, it has been done before. Patagonia did it. But Patagonia did it with beef, with buffalo jerky. And I'm like, oh, no. That is not regenerative. Okay. Anyway, there are many other examples I can spend a day talking about. There's also another beautiful project with aloe vera and the Maasai women in Kenya. Super dry, land has been overgrazed, complete in prickly pears. We know women never have a good, situation in most places. We found a species of aloe that grows really well in the drought. They've been trained in permaculture. There is a little permaculture demonstration center. They created a women-only cooperative. They're helping now manage the goats, so there is no overgrazing and just regenerating the local ecosystem. That's also Lush. This is one of Paulo's early projects. And then Guayaki, Yerba Mate doing amazing work in South America, also regenerating communities through Regenerative Mate, B Corporation, they're amazing. There are many, I could spend the day. It's great, there are so many people doing good work. Okay, over to you now. So, I just want to go back and show something. So these are like the goals. But how do we do this? What are the principles? And there are a bunch of principles, but I actually like to hear from you. I'd like us to think and look to nature and look at our own bodies, because we're also nature, and answer these questions. How does nature do? So how does nature do communication? How does nature communicate?
Without words.
Huh?
Without words.
Exactly. So but how? So think a little bit about it. How does nature build resilience? So nature comes back after a fire. If you deforest the land, forest comes back. If you make a cut on your skin, you self-heal. There is some repair going on. How does nature build resilience? How does nature control and manage? With a manager telling people what to do, micromanaging all the ants. How does nature do control and management? How does nature spur innovation? How does nature create innovation? How does nature collaborate? And then how does nature, I forgot what that one was.
Create value.
Create value, yeah. How does nature add value, right? Imagine these beautiful, mature ecosystems that we have, mangroves, giant sea kelp farms under the sea. How is nature constantly generating value? Self-organization is not a startling new feature of the world. It's the way the world has created itself for billions of years. You know, we know how to do this. It's in our every cell. Every living thing self-organizes. So I think it also, it's more about remembering than it is about trying to create something new as well. So, thank you so much for doing all of this. And now in tribe time, the idea you will explain. Okay, so thank you so much.